thought I'd take a moment while the light is still nice early in the morning here and wander up to our neighbor Ian's slope above our pond, where we've got a whole bunch of air prune boxes, and talk about how those trees are growing this year. We took a look at our high tunnel over here recently, which the topsoil for the high tunnel came from the excavation of this pond back in 2020. I'll link to that video here that talked about the design with that. The pond is doing pretty nicely. We redirected some rainwater recently into it, and lots of vitality and life happening. It's still nice and cold, a lovely space to swim. Really appreciate this pond being in the landscape. We'll look at that in more detail soon enough. But upslope of this pond, so this is the deposit soil from excavating deep down. Pretty lean nutrient is this entire berm. So this was all a byproduct of the pond being dug. We are planting out on contour. You can see where I've mowed with the scythe and deposited goldenrod and grasses. We've got seaberry starting to do the pioneering work of holding the soil together on this kind of beat up subsoil. You can see some fruit on there. So we'll keep adding plants in there over time. And one of the ways that we can add fertility to this subsoil deposit is by bringing air prune boxes. And so if you're not familiar with those at all, I'll link to a video talking about the construction and building. The air prune boxes being in this landscape up high on contour, they are filled with beautiful rich soil. And so we can grow tree crops that we need for the nursery or for planting out or to share with people in these boxes for a year or two. And then when they leave to move to another spot, we have these exquisite crescent moon planting beds of absolutely beautiful aged compost, and we can plant in trees and shrubs as permanent installation. So these air prune boxes are acting as a pioneering planting, annual, biennial pioneer to transition into permanent long succession. But in the meantime, we get this immense amount of yield. Let's look at some. There are two boxes in this area, one on the west, one on the east, that do not need the caps that keep rodents out. This is pawpaw, save seed from our own trees up at the Trumansburg 6-acre site. There's probably about 200 little first-year seedlings. Right now, Juan and I are going through and getting actual head counts of these plants, since we'll be updating our fall website offerings on September 1st. This will be some of the plants that will be on offer. Beautiful persimmons from fall collected seed. This is about the biggest I've ever seen our first year persimmons. There's probably about 150 in this one bed. Up on this highest knoll are 4 air prune boxes that have Yamhill and Jefferson cultivar hazelnuts growing. A couple of them we still have the caps on. Try to keep the caps on as long as possible, and then at a certain point the leaves push through enough. Like pretty soon we're going to need to take this one off before it starts really damaging the tops of these. They are overgrowing the 2-foot height that we've set up in these cages. The risky bit, this is the fun gamble with the air prune box world, is that, okay, it's amazing that they've grown so tall, the lid has to come off, and so then the deer can come in and start nibbling the tops. So, oh well, the plant's completely fine. It's certainly not going to die from that. It's just a minor setback. It's a little aesthetic question mark. We're going to need to figure out a little bit of ring of fencing around this area. So the cage was to protect from voles and chipmunks and squirrels and birds early on, which would definitely take every last seed if they could. And then the caps were to protect from deer. So whoops, we got to get something going on. We've got scrap sheep fencing that we can put around this area. It's a little unsightly, but it'll preserve the tops of these trees, and worth doing. It'll be a little bit much to lift the caps off of every one of these boxes, but I'll definitely go through and highlight a few. We've got some beautiful English walnuts in here. It looks like they're in a cage. It's kind of true, but it's to protect them. This is almost entirely Ashworth bur oak. Very, very low tannin bur oak. Very unique plant. Very expensive seed to find online. We found a tree nearby that we can collect seed from. It's pretty wonderful to have that. Nanking cherry. We've got, I think, 4 boxes that are growing some beautiful Nanking cherries, bigger than we've ever seen before. They'll top out at 2 to 3 feet, I suspect. I think when we offer them this fall, we'll have smaller ones, but then some, nice 2 to 3 foot, 2 foot plus for sure. Then we had some gaps in here where the Nanking cherry were not working out, and this little friend, this giant beauty, showed up. I don't know what type of pepper it is. It's probably some sort of sweet bell pepper. Maybe it was from the compost. It's kind of fun. We're a gap where the Nanking cherry didn't work out, we can have a bell pepper growing. Why not? In fact, in that theme, this box here, which has no cage or cap, it was filled with hazelnuts. There must have been some little gap. It's amazing. The tiniest gap is all it takes for a mouse or somebody to get in and eat all the nuts. Would have been about 200 hazelnuts, is now 0 hazelnuts. And in the compost was a tomato or two. These are seedlings. We didn't plant them. And so Juan and I decided we're going to leave this as our testing box, that we won't water this or weed this at all and just see what happens. So if the tomato dies in here, we'll know that the other plants are under intense stress. But somewhere down in there, a couple tomatoes starting up, to be determined what type it is. But kind of neat that if it didn't work out as an air prune box for what we're trying to do, sometimes nature's got an idea of another type of food. So we've got a gap in the Nanking cherries, which will give us some nice big blocky bell peppers, and a complete erasure of what we had hoped for, which gives space for tomato to fill out. So we get some snacks out of here. This will be a new character this fall that we'll be able to offer, is northern pecan. We found a couple different sources of folks growing pecans in much colder climates where they're actually getting nuts. And so they're growing beautifully in here. Let me see if I can find just a sense of what size. So a couple of them didn't work out, but that's a nice size pecan for a northern climate. We've got a bunch growing in the field down the way and a bunch in here. We have a few hundred of these trees that worked out this year, which feels really thrilling to be able to offer some new varieties of things on the website too. Down in this box, they're still short enough that we keep the lid on. These are all shellbark hickory, which I don't think in the first year get particularly large. This will be another new plant on offer this fall. We have probably about 100 or so. I definitely want to plant a bunch of these in our own landscapes too. I definitely love and appreciate hickory, and can also very much appreciate that size. So that's still a hickory, still has the flavor of a shagbark hickory, but my hands are decently large. That's a fairly large hickory. So shellbark ought to be a neat one. And they're tolerant of, I think, even wetter conditions than shagbark. I'm going to close this lid and move on. Just some nice cultivar black walnuts from our friend Cliff England down in Kentucky. Thorpe, I think. I got to look it up, but really growing well. They look like they'll get to be 2 to 3 feet tall before fall. We've got our little friend Bunchy, the neighbor cat, who helps with voles. He's off to do some work over there. Another exquisite box of Nanking cherry. Last year there was an almost entire crop failure except for these two shrubs that were in between our friend John and Laura Lee's home down in Ithaca, New York. I handed those trees off to them maybe 10 years ago, and with the freeze that happened, they were next to a waterway in between two homes. The Nanking cherries actually cropped heavily there. It's probably some of the only ones in the region, and we went and collected with them and their kids, got seed, overwintered the seed, and they're beautifully growing this year. Hundreds and hundreds of Nanking cherries. It's so exciting to have them back again. Thanks, friends, for being here again. I'm sure I missed a few here or there, but pretty exciting to see, you know, on the surface, just a bunch of weird boxes in a weird semicircle up on our neighbor's knoll. But pretty deep layers of meaning. There's really powerful financial ramifications for what's happening in here as far as our needs to make our living. This is how we make our living, is selling these plants, trading, working with these plants. And that the idea of them being gently in this landscape with no plastic, we water with collected rainwater. They're doing their thing. These are all black locust boxes with outdoor grade screws and galvanized mesh. These should be reusable for another 10 to 15 years, growing many thousands of trees each year. And then once they're gone, transitioning a space into a fertile, beautiful, weed-free context to grow forever trees. Some of these trees will land in this landscape at the end of this season and be here providing nuts and fruit for generations to come. But yeah, that's our update on air prune boxes right now in this landscape. There's some other ones doing some other wonderful things. Similar vibe though. So we'll be updating our inventory. We plan to do a full-on tree and shrub offering for this fall. That'll be September 1st, but we'll talk in more detail about that before that happens. Let me know if you've got questions or ideas and suggestions. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you all are growing beautiful trees where you can, when you can, if you have interest to do so. Let us know in the comments, what are you doing air prune box wise? How's that working? Share some links to videos or pictures of things you feel excited about growing in your landscape, and let's keep each other excited, motivated to do this kind of work. Thanks.